Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerised, astounded, and entertained. Hello and welcome to another edition of Veterans to Success. And today I've got with me Brendon, Blair. Hello, Brendon. How are you doing?
Hello, Joe. Thank you for having me today. I'm doing great, thank you. How are you doing?
That's good. Yeah, I'm fantastic too. Thank you. I'm so pleased you're joining me. And you know, same drill. Same drill is we just go straight into it. And we do a general reveal as we go along, because I know your story and it's absolutely fabulous. And the thing is, nobody else does yet, or very few people. So we're gonna jump straight in at the start. And Brendon, right? I know what type of person you are, what drive you've got, an ambition, and you probably a bit of a loose cannon like me at times. So
nothing wrong with being a loose cannon, eh?
No, exactly. So tell me what happened in your life. What was going on before you joined the military, please?
So as you can hear, I'm obviously South African. I was the age of 19 before I joined up. I lived in South Africa for 19 years. My parents are Scottish, so I always say, what a combination between Scottish and South African. I always support the Scottish, though, when they're playing. That's the only problem.
Good lad. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
My accent doesn't give away the fact that I was born in Glasgow, so I'm with you on that. Kindred spirits, definitely.
Oh wow, your accent's definitely dulled then.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it's gone. So that's an interesting combination. South Africa, Scottish parents. How did that happen then?
So my parents obviously immigrated to South Africa. They were meant to tour around the world, and they basically got stuck. They just grew roots, bought a house, and had kids. And obviously that was my starting journey. I used to work in a restaurant called Spur in South Africa. It was a steak ranch.
Right.
I traveled all over South Africa, saving money to come over here. My parents had heard that I wanted to join the army, and they weren't very keen on the fact that I was going to join the army. So they said to me that they wouldn't pay for my plane ticket if I was joining the army. So obviously I saved quite a lot of my own money, but I said to my parents that I weren't going to join the army. The day I arrived, I went straight into the recruitment office.
Oh, you porky pie teller. That's terrible. So you went straight to the career center and said, I want in.
Yeah, so initially I wanted to join the Air Corps as an Air Corps pilot, but the waiting list was quite long in that. And the guy that I was obviously trying to get in the army with, he was a guardsman, and obviously they're trying to promote their own regiment, and they were like, I'll try and get in the guards. So I did a look at life course at the guards, but the whole time in the back of my head, I said to him, I said, if I'm joining the infantry, I want to join the best of the best. I want to join the Parachute Regiment. I went on a look at a guard's life course, and I just looked at their boots, and I said, how many hours did they spend polishing their boots? And I just said, this isn't for me. But the whole time, obviously, before training, I didn't actually know that I could run the 1.5 miles in 9.5 minutes. I hadn't trained for it.
Oh, that's the first time, that.
Yeah, so I saw another guy. He was built like we call them a shit brick house. And I said, what are you joining? He says, I'm joining the Parachute Regiment. And I said, have you done your 1.5 miles in that time, 9.5 minutes? He says, yeah, a couple of times. I says, well, wow, I'm keeping up with this man. And in
Right.
the end, I actually ended up beating him on the last stretch.
Oh, so the gauntlet was down and then you beat him. How gutted was he?
So straight away, I went and changed my mind and said, I'm totally going for the Parachute Regiment now that I had the time to obviously on the mile and a half to do that.
Right. And we know that getting into the parachute regiment is tough. It's tough getting in any regiment, to be honest. The thing is that the attrition is quite high. So how many recruits were there with
So
your intake?
our intakes basically had to merge into two intakes. So we started off with the two intakes with 122 people.
Right.
And in the end, we ended up with 29 individuals that were ready to go and passed. Obviously, the injury rate is quite high when obviously the parachute regiment, the training is quite arduous, and people obviously they don't have the right mindset to stick it out as well. They have a few dark days and they just pack it in really.
So what sort of dark days do they have? What's the difference between someone who knuckles down and stays in and someone who just jibs it, who says, "Oh no, I can't do this."
So for me, obviously, I had something to prove for my parents and something to prove for myself. So that was my go. I just wasn't going to quit.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people, it's very easy to quit rather than carry on.
Yeah.
But I've spoken to a lot of them since, and a lot of them have a regret of not carrying on. So living with that regret is something I think is worse than actually not going for it.
Yeah, the price of regret lives with you forever, whereas the price of just pushing through something can pay dividends over the long term, can't it?
And of course, the army's made me the person I am today.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful. So, I mean, in training itself, I remember rocking up. I was a new bod, and you just don't, you're not unsure of yourself. You're rocking up at the train station with this ironing board in your hand, and they go, "Oh, you get over here." And you're like, "Oh." It's the shock of capture, really. And I remember on the first day, until this day, I don't actually know if it was set up but I just don't see someone doing what they said that happened. So
Yeah.
apparently he pulled the middle finger up at the corporal and "Oh, you get up here," and literally threw him around that office. We just heard everything going. So I'm not too sure if it was, I'm sure it was just an act.
All right.
Um,
So they got this bloke in for giving them the bird. They shut the door behind, and all you heard was this ruckus and banging desks and chairs, and you didn't know
There's
what was
moving
going on.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Right.
I think it was put on just to enhance that shock of capture.
Now, of course, your surname is shared with someone who was prime minister of this country around the time you got in. What sort of flack did that get you?
Yeah, so my surname's obviously Blair. So the first thing the corporal said is, "Right, Blair." They called me to the office. We came running along and said, "You'll be now known as Tony Blair." And it's a nickname that stuck with me even till this day. I call myself Tony. Sometimes it gets a bit confusing because some people in the army didn't know I had a first name or Brendon. Uh, so Tony Blair proper stuck, and it still sticks till this day. So
Yeah, because actually, someone referred to you as Tony, and I went, oh, and then the penny dropped because I know that anyone with a surname of White is chalky, and like, yeah, I was called Scouse, even though Scousers, I sound nothing like a Scouser, but someone who's in the southeast thinks I'm a Scouser. So yeah, I know how things and surnames stick. So you get through, you get a bit of flack for your surname. You're in the parachute regiment. You've gone through phase 1 and 2, which is pretty grueling, and then you end up at P Company, don't you?
yeah, so it's an event, P Company. It's a week long. You do numerous events. I remember the log and the stretcher very well. I'm very fortunate I stayed on, and again, it's that resilience mindset. And just dedicating 100%. And I know for a fact when you get on that log the minute you get on it, you want to come off.
Yeah.
And you've got a mile and a half of this, and I remember it being agony from the word go. And we end up with probably, I think it was 3 of us left on it at the end from 7 or 8, and they all just come off it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the more that comes off, the harder it becomes.
Yeah.
We actually won our log and stretcher, my
Oh, good.
section. So that was something else. But just staying on both of them, and again with a stretcher, I still take part in a stretcher race, which is JJ's memorial stretcher. It was one of the boys that died in Afghan, and
Ah, right. Okay.
he put in his will that every year to commemorate, as a joke, the boys will run a stretcher race.
Right.
And
Okay.
so we actually use the proper ones for that. And honestly, it's because everyone's cheering, go, go, go. It just boosts that
Yeah.
adrenaline.
Yeah.
And it's quicker than I even remember. I don't know if my fitness has gone down now.
Well, maybe age is taking its toll, and I remember doing many a stretcher race on the stretcher, and then also taking it as a PT session or a carder or a beasting for someone. So yeah, and it is grueling. Yeah, definitely. But it's great that you get together with your uh, former buddies, your comrades, to pay respect to one of your lads
Yeah,
that lost his life.
definitely, and it's a great time just to go back onto it all and just to see and reflect. And the battalion always supports the event, which is great. So you always meet the new generation
Yeah.
as well.
Oh,
And every
that's
year it seems to get quicker and quicker.
does it?
And it's by fault you also have a few beers in you.
Oh,
So
well, of course you do. You've got to do that, haven't you?
and I think I don't know if it's the beers, but it's just really tough. But
Well, I suppose the beers wouldn't help really. It's not
no,
exactly
definitely not.
a positive stimulant, is it, for
No.
running anyway on a stretcher race? So you did a couple of tours of Afghan, and without going into anything that's operationally sensitive, and only disclose what you feel comfortable with. How did those tours go, and what effect did it have on you and your buddies
So
and the unit, in fact?
yeah, I was obviously sent to one para, which is Special Forces Support Group. I was fortunate to have done a few tours with one para or Special Forces Support Group. Um, Obviously, you do see things out there. One of my good friends, Jacko Van Gas, I was in basic training with him. He'd lost his arm with an RPG attack, and I'm very pleased for Jacko Van Gas because he's become a role model for British athletes. He's an Olympian for British cycling team,
Right.
which yeah, he's a great ambassador for that. So again, it just shows you when the darkest days hit us and you think life is over, it's what you make of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and I'd obviously from one para I then became two para. I'd done an operational tour with two para. Um, so yeah, it's great to have done tours and to be associated with the Parachute Regiment as that. But it obviously takes its toll on the individuals, especially when things happen out there, and obviously dealing with that in your own way. It is quite tough. But as a brotherhood, you always get through it, and I'm always appreciative of the brotherhood.
Yeah. I thank you for that, and my thoughts, prayers, and respect go out to those that gave their lives and those that served and saw many uh, sad things that were obviously took the toll. Now, when you got back from Afghan on the second time, where were you at with your personal life? What was going on?
So I'd obviously got back. I then decided to leave the military on my own terms. I wanted to spend more time with my family. I've got two wonderful kids. And obviously, when I left the military, I decided because I think of all the confusions and not sure what I wanted to do at the point. Uh, I obviously kind of divorced my wife. We went through a divorce, a separation. So obviously that took its toll on me leaving the military. Um, but it was a journey that I'm very appreciative that I've been on, because
Yeah.
again, I wouldn't be where I am today without that failure and without the obviously what happened with a divorce. Sometimes in that moment, again, you just feel the darkest of hours, and it's not the best of feelings, but it's what we make of that that makes us.
Yeah, and we chatted about this at some length actually, and we I shared with you what my mum used to say to me: if it doesn't kill you, it'll do you good. And at the time, it can get really low, can't it? I mean, you feel on your own.
Yeah, so obviously we are born in the dark and we grow in the dark.
Yeah,
So for me, it's one of those things that come to you. So I always take this dark times, and a lot of people see it as the end state, but I see the dark times as a place to grow. And it's honestly, it's just so much that comes from that.
and what was the relationship with alcohol that you had that sort of took over your life, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, in that darkest days, it's very easy to start drinking a couple of bottles of wine and just to dull the pain.
Yeah,
Start going out more with the boys. But I obviously started doing a course. Obviously, that's a normal thing, being in the military and the banter, and you just revert to being out on the piss and
yeah,
basically
yeah,
luckily for me, I took part in a program. It was the alcohol experiment. It's a free 30-day trial, and it's with Annie Grace, The Naked Mind.
right.
So I obviously did that, and I come to terms with alcohol and the meanings of alcohol. And yeah, I mean, I was in that dark place, so I started to drink more. And again, I was very appreciative of my journey, and for that, I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So you you didn't just ditch the marriage and give up on it, did you? Because you were telling me, you told me an interesting tale about the marriage guidance and how you felt that went and what you discovered. Could you just share some of the detail about that?
Yeah, so I have figured out I had obviously been to marriage counseling previously, and for me, I'm not a fan of when couples go for marriage counseling. It's it's very traumatic, I'd say. You're in a safe place, everyone. It's okay to speak, and
Yeah,
they fully take the other person's side. So what I did was I found a couple of guys, and I invested in myself for my own personal development at this point. So I'd figured out this, and I'd spent quite a lot of money on myself. And I believe that the marriage could have been saved if I had maybe reacted sooner. But I think ladies go through the breakup a lot longer, a lot way before it actually happens.
yeah, yeah,
So you get different stages of marriage divorces. I call it a marriage cancer, and depending on what stage we're at, is the stage that it is basically savable. So one or two you could save it, but I was too far gone in that. And I'm very appreciative of my mentors and stuff at that point. But my mentor actually said to me, and this was the thing, he says, I said to him, "What are the chances of me rekindling once my ex-wife leaves?" And he said, "Honestly," he said, "without my help, you've got zero." And from that day, I'd literally left it. I'd obviously been on my own journey with it, with that as well. But I'm very grateful because that was my starting point for self-development, and I
yeah.
believe that's the best investment that you can make in yourself is just investing in yourself. You could take that same money that you go for university and you put it in yourself, and you'll just become a lot better person.
And that's an interesting point you make, because that's along the lines that when they say that a young girl is growing up, she's always someone who's an age, same age, a boy and a girl. The girl tends to be more mature, and it's interesting that you say that the woman, hey, do you enjoy sipping a good glass of wine? As you know, sipping too much wine can leave you feeling groggy in the mornings. For less than the price of a good bottle of wine, you can gain access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joelteams.com now to find out more. That's JOETEAMS.com to find out more. In your opinion, and I get this actually, starts the divorce procedure or the detachment a lot sooner than the bloke. And some may say, oh, well, that's because blokes don't get feelings as much. But whatever it is, that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, so obviously for me, I know that's the case. They say 70 or 80% of marriages are split up by ladies. And usually when it hits the guy, it's like a bus hitting them straight in the face.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that I've obviously been on, and obviously leaving the military, being homeless for a little bit, and being through the divorce, and obviously turning to alcohol. It's not the best place. Obviously, I was going to in my journey. I obviously figured out there's an Arabic saying for the word alcohol, and it's
Yeah.
alcohol. It's meaning body eating spirit. It
Yeah.
means that you actually get further away from your soul when drinking excessively. So it's basically you're vibing on this lowest frequency possible when you're drinking alcohol. Uh, and of course, for me, in my opinion, society wants you to be vibing on that lowest frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm obviously not telling anyone not to drink alcohol, but it's just being aware of that, and it's obviously, yeah, just being aware of what it actually does.
And rather you control the alcohol rather than the alcohol control you.
Again, and a lot of people revert to drugs as well, just for enhancers. I'm fortunate; I've never been down that road.
Yeah.
But it's again, it's just putting things in your body that shouldn't be there.
Mm. Now, I'm interested, I'm always interested in financial freedom, and that's what I do when I'm helping clients. And I find your approach, oops, I find your approach, and that's an interesting time. That's my opportunity clock, because I knew that we were speaking at this time, and it was my prompt to bring this in for you. And that is that it wasn't just your trip to financial freedom that you started after you got over the alcohol, got over the divorce and stuff. You started much sooner, didn't you? In 2008, wasn't it? What happened then in 2008? It was when you first got into the property market and thinking about how you could build your regime, if you like, your
Yeah,
empire.
so I obviously started with property. I'd obviously got myself on the property market and the ladder. I bought one property in Wales. I've rented that out. Again, I always had that sense of bettering myself, and I always said to the guys, I'd always pass that on. The knowledge is better yourselves. Don't just get out on the piss every weekend. Buy a house, invest in that, invest in the journey. Again, I'd figured out there's so many rules in buying houses. Obviously, my first one, I'd made a few of them simple mistakes, uh, but which I'm very appreciative for learning again. And yeah, so I've obviously got two houses. I left the military with two houses, one in Wales, one further in Colchester where we lived. And I have, in throughout the divorce, I've obviously been through. My ex and I were very, very comfortable with going through everything. But I obviously then got into the point of trying to rent that house out. And obviously that got me a little bit in the homeless place. But I'm fortunate that I managed to obviously have that bond with my ex-wife and to talk about things and pay her off, and So that was obviously another journey that I've been on. I started obviously 2008, and again, I always was an advocate for people buying houses. So I always knew that, and again, that was something that I've obviously developed and I passed on to many blokes.
Yeah, and because it's about building multiple streams of income, which is what we're going to come on to a bit later in more detail. Now, the fact is that when you got out, you've got your ELC, is it? The that you can use when you
Yeah,
come
so
out from.
you've got your ELC, which is £2,500. For me, the CTP package, or it's not that it wasn't the best, and people get lost. So they teach you how to write a CV, but I had put my CV out probably 100 times, and I probably got one reply to that CV. For me, I then obviously went on another journey, and I was just truthful and real. And I put on a Facebook group. I said, "Is anyone looking for a bitch? I just want to learn. I'm an electrician. I did a building course. I did an aircon course. I did a doorman's course." Because I was just unsure of what I was doing. I mean, I was quite fortunate when I was leaving the military. I was always working as well, so I developed another job. So I was leaving. I had a job to go into, but I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
So it was all well and good. I could pay the bills, but I wanted to make a difference, and I figured that out. Even when I was in the military, I figured that out. I went through a stage where I don't know. There was one of the guys. He had his daughter had stage 4 neuroblastoma cancer,
right.
and
Okay.
it was he was trying to raise £100,000 to go to the States to go and get the treatment, which he since has done, and it's been a great journey. But I developed a sense for entrepreneurship when I was actually in the army, and I went and bought. I started. I must have put £200 in, or £300 on my own money. I went to the Bookers. I bought a tuck shop, and I started selling on this exercise because the colourmen were slacking at this point. So I come in, and the good old Tony Blair got away with it. But because I'd said to everyone that I'm going to donate all the profits to the Blair Fund, I donated it. It was £2,500 I donated in the end.
Well done. That's fantastic.
And it was great because I obviously let the blokes know that this is from all of us. I didn't take the credit, and I obviously did the starting point for it. And again, I then got into that, and I was always selling something, but it got into that point where I'd noticed even at that point the higher ranks would say, "Oh, he's dodgy him," and
Yeah.
it was a bit
Yeah.
of like, maybe because I was always working or doing something and trying to better myself, getting properties, I could always sense that. I had another story where two lads were helping me. My house in Wales, obviously, with property, you have good experiences and bad experiences sometimes. And one of my tenants had actually had a weed plant going, 400 plants.
Right.
Again, it's how you deal with these situations. I mean, I walked into that property at one point, and your heart just sinks
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I luckily I had two friends that were in a bad place, and they were helping me do the place up. And one of them went and saw one of the higher ranks and said, "Oh, I'm working with Tony Blair, and we helping each other." And he's like, "Oh, he's that dodgy man, him, isn't he?" But
Yeah.
I think it was always just trying to give back and trying to help others, which I've always been accustomed to.
Thank you for sharing that. You see, that's interesting, isn't it? Because if you do something out of the ordinary entrepreneurial flair spirit, it can be often seen as you're dodgy. Well, I remember, similar to you, before I got out, I probably became, I entered the civilian process earlier than when I got out. Because you got to prepare, haven't you? And I was a DJ and a doorman, and I used to DJ in pubs. I got uh, and it was just to get me into what's going to go on once you get out of the military, because you've got to do stuff. And I became a financial advisor. And I remember you talk about someone growing weed in the property. Well, I had a tenant because I split my house into two. I had an upstairs and I lived in the downstairs because the interest rates went up to 16%, right? And I was going to lose my house if I didn't do this. And I remember walking into the kitchen and this guy liked engineering so much that he took half of his car engine out and had it in the kitchen, right?
Wow.
So yeah, so I was thinking, well, we're going to deal with this. That's another story. But I get what you're saying, that you've got to improvise, adapt, and overcome because you've got to stay afloat, haven't you?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, sometimes this in failures and things, especially that, I mean, they knocked walls down. And it was actually from there that we actually built one of our companies, which was the construction company. That
Right.
was from there, just going up there and fixing the house. So obviously the positives come from that. And a lot of landlords will just be like, I want to sell the place, but never sell an investment property. That's one little tip.
Now, something as well before we move on, I want you to think about something because I asked you a question about how you deal with failure, and there was one particular time uh, you recall about receiving a letter, wasn't there?
Yeah, so obviously my parents, being Scottish, they were quite religious in the way that they did things. So my parents were the last people to know that I was obviously going through a divorce, and obviously it's a tough time. Obviously, I obviously went and touched on a few different things. I'd said that yeah, my wife actually the day she was leaving, I obviously came to that awareness of her leaving. I was basically crying. I was having a little cry to myself, and my ex-wife walked in the house at this point, and I didn't know how to control myself. So she saw me tearing up, and it was obviously very tough. But I've actually realized that being in touch with our feminine side is something that
Yeah,
I really have been more in touch with. And obviously, I'm a big masculine paratrooper, ex-paratrooper, and I'm sat here saying about feminine energy. So a lot of people might take that the wrong way. So I might explain a bit about feminine energy.
yeah,
So obviously, the feminine energy and obviously practicing the energy, it may be a bit wrong. So obviously, women don't like it when men are in their wounded feminine energy, and it's totally different when a male in his divine femininity. So
yeah,
that is when the man is obviously he's there and he's being attractive and he's fully present and being vulnerable at that point, instead of being manipulating and wounded feminine energy, which is the bad side, which is
yeah,
kind of the thing. So I promote divine femininity, and there's nothing wrong with it. And being in touch with your feminine side, I see it with one of the guys. He hasn't seen his kids for over a year, and sometimes he obviously gets quite teary. And
yeah,
he's
yeah,
he's a parachute regiment soldier as well, ex-parachute regiment. We've got this bond and with this brotherhood, and I just said, mate, it's okay to cry, brother. You know, it's as a
yeah,
man, I could see him holding it in and welling it in.
yeah, yeah,
And obviously, for me, it's just being in touch with that feminine, the divine femininity, which
yeah,
it's obviously open heart, able to talk about your feelings. And it's just a deep, deep level of, unconditional love.
yeah,
And it's where the kindness for the man comes in. And for me, obviously, I'd went through that process with my dad and my mom, and as I said, they were the last people to know about my divorce. They didn't realize that I'd spent quite a lot of money on myself trying to enhance that relationship. So it was probably 2 or 3 weeks before she'd left, and my parents were absolutely horrified. And they said, because my dad was the one that was preaching to us at the event, and
yeah,
he under my dead body, I was there witnessing your marriage. And for me, he's like, I'm not going to let that happen. And I said, like, I'm on my own journey here and I need to do my own journey. And my parents were actually horrified. And straight away, they reverted to the negative. And it's very easy to revert to the negative.
yeah,
And since I'd obviously been on this journey of growth, and I'm very fortunate that my wife, ex-wife, and I, we get on so well. I see my kids, and again, it's just being present. I try and sometimes it's hard to be there. So I always say there's two wolves. There's the good wolf and the bad wolf, and which one thrives is the one you feed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so for me, that was obviously the hardest part. And I choose every day to feed the good wolf, although it's very easy to revert to the bad one, to
Yeah,
belittle them, to call them names, to horrible kind of them. And it's easier to be that, but I choose every day to be the positive. And even sometimes I find it hard and I bite my lip, or uh, I go, okay. And I take that prominent breath and I analyze the situation, which I'm very grateful for. So obviously, moving on then a few years, I'd received this letter from my parents, and on the letter, it was just basically how I've dealt with the situation. I haven't fought for my marriage, and the disappointment from my parents' side, saying how disappointed and they didn't raise me to be like this. And to be honest, I didn't even read the second page because
right,
when my parents are obviously quite Christian and they're spiritual. Obviously, I've got my own beliefs, and I believe there's a higher power of such. And for me, my parents obviously they have that Christian mindset, and they were in that Christian frame. So he wrote this letter being in that frame. So all that toxicity was coming out, and it was something I wouldn't write to my own son.
right.
I just said to my dad, I said, I appreciate your letter, but I stood up for myself, which I had never done to my dad. And I said, firstly, I'm on my own journey and I'm going to continue being on my journey because there's a lot of women and men that don't see their kids. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of things I'm grateful for. Um, and yeah, for me, it obviously affected me quite bad that he was saying that. I actually got someone else to read the second half of the letter, and they said it wasn't worth reading. Um, and I appreciate it. But I've obviously been on my own journey of higher power and realizing that there's a higher power. And again, as I said earlier, it's learning to embrace both darkness and light.
Yeah,
Uh, as I said earlier, it's not the light that we get enlightened. So it's the darkness you find your strength.
yeah.
It, it's where you get your resilience, your courage. It's where you build your whole character as a person. So never be afraid of going into the dark because the strongest version of you is born.
And exactly. And if everything was great and honky dory and life was just a dream, there'd be no contrast, would there? And
No,
you wouldn't know the difference between success and failure, or dark and light, and pain and salvation. And it's interesting because we talked about fail, first attempt in learning is what I think it is. And you told me something else. You put your slant on it. Just share yours because I think it's quite good and I'm going to nick it actually.
well, it's fearlessly. I've just added a bit onto it, but it is exactly what it is. It's fearlessly advancing and learning until realizing excellence. So on failure, there's so many people. Obviously, I've seen failure. I've been part of failure because you're going to fail more than you succeed in life, and it's how you deal with it. And as Thomas and Edison said, I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways for it not to for it to work, for
Yeah,
it work, sorry. So obviously failure is part of our journey. And obviously being in the Parachute Regiment, I've seen the failure, blokes going and failing and not maybe due to mindset and stuff. And then obviously coming through as a Parachute Regiment soldier, you think that you can't fail. So
yeah,
it's obviously bred in you and it's taught that you're the best. And again, sometimes when you go into Civvy Street with that mindset, you do come a cropper. So sometimes seeing failure is harder than obviously going through it. But I believe dealing with failure is a common challenge, and everyone has their own way of approaching it. So um, as I said, failure is part of every journey, and I've just looked at it very differently. I see it as an opportunity to learn and grow, take a step back, analyze everything, and obviously every place where I've basically failed, I've looked back and I've then succeeded on it. And it's also just that pursuit of carrying on.
Yeah. Do you like coffee? A lot of people tend to spend money on expensive coffees from outlets without even thinking about it. Well, for the price of just 2 coffees per month, you can gain access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joeteams.com now to find out more. That's JOETEAMS.com to find out more. And it gives you a stepping stone. Like for instance, it was interesting about the feeding the wolf, the bad wolf or the good wolf, because it can be quite easy to feed the bad wolf, like say negative things about a person or not be nice. And my mum used to say to me, if you've not got anything good to say, do not say anything.
Don't say that. But it is, and for people, it's very easy to go down that wrong road of negativity. And obviously, sometimes failing is how you fail. So failing forward is also very important.
Yeah.
So learn to fail forward, because when we learn to fail forward, it's an inevitable part of our journey. And a lot of people just they give up at the first stance.
Yeah, because it's a lot easier to do that as well.
I mean, I'd see it as failures are I wouldn't see it as a failure as a as a personal worth, but rather like a stepping stone towards improvement.
Yeah.
It's just a temporary setback in the road, I say.
Now, along the way, you've had people you've looked up to that have helped you, and you've grown your network, and now that you're out of the military, which by the way, you've done so much already, and you've not been out of the military that long. How important do you think your network in the military was, which effectively is what we know as the buddy system? And now, how are you bringing that forward and paying it forward to developing your network on Civvy Street?
So as I said, I was always Mr. Popular in the army. Everyone would see me in the corridors. Hello, Tony Blair, mate, you're right. So it was always that brotherhood that I suppose when I left as well, no one basically sees that, or I only keep in contact with a few people. But I've been fortunate that I've surrounded myself with great mentors,
Yeah.
and obviously people that are driven on the same path. Because on our journey of growth, you leave a lot of people behind. And obviously, I was saying that to my parents as well. I said, I'm willing to leave you guys behind if obviously by sending that letters. And obviously, you get the opportunities and the knowledge and the insight from people. Obviously,
Yeah.
is so great. And surrounding yourself with great people and aligning yourself with people that are on the same mission, and just to give back as much as you can is always great.
Yeah, and that's very interesting actually, because when I'm working with clients, whether they be business executives or veterans, and I know we're going to do a lot of work together because we're going to talk about that in a minute. What sometimes I say to the guys, listen, right, who's a good influence on your life and who's a not so good, because you have to say goodbye to some people, because you will be as successful as your closest 5 people, whether that's be successful financially or health or mindset, because not everyone sees success as monetary, but they see success in other ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your support, by the way. I do appreciate it. And obviously, I say you surround yourself with the 5 people, the top 5 people, and you become them. So
Yeah.
if you talk about chocolate ice cream all day, every day, and how to sell chocolate ice cream, you'll be the 6th person.
Yeah.
And again, if you surround yourself with millionaires, you'll be the 6th one. And again, it's very important with this that you look at yourself and analyze yourself, because as that person, as one of them 5 people, your own mindset is very important. So
Definitely.
your own self should be part of them people that you hang around with. Learn to love yourself. Learn to be yourself, and just love and appreciate who you are.
Yeah, and that's not like when you say that, like years ago, if you'd have said that and you being a roughy toughy parachute regiment, me roughy toughy engineers, and we both had our specialisms. If when you say learn to love yourself, you'd be like, what are you talking about, mate? But looking at the actual message behind that, you've got to be at peace with yourself, haven't you? And recognize your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunities and threats that it offers to you.
And that's it. And obviously, people obviously we get lost. So I've got another saying. It was from a book. It was the book was called "The Horse, the Boy, the Fox, and the Mole."
Ah, right, yeah,
It's one of my favorite quotes out of the whole book. It's where the boy and the horse are in the woods,
yeah.
and the boy says to the horse, "I can't see a way through," and the horse says, "Can you see your next step?" Yeah. Well, then take your next step. And all the time we look at the goal and the future, and we look at the end game and how long the journey is. And of course we get overwhelmed by that.
Mm.
And instead just right, it's nothing to worry about. Take the next step and get closer to the end goal. So you don't have to worry about how far it is, and all you need to focus on the right now and the next step.
That's a great tip, that actually. Um, Now the journey you're on now with your co-founders, tell me a little bit about that.
So obviously, I mentioned before how I've started one of the companies, which is the construction company, and obviously me leaving the military, not knowing what I was going to do, I became an electrician, aircon engineer, building. So I'm now doing all those things,
Yeah.
utilizing them in my own skill set. So I always promote try and do your own things. And again, it always comes down to wanting to quit, and it's very easy to quit. And again, it's just having that. So I've been fortunate. I've surrounded myself with great people that are aligned. So my business partner, Chris, we obviously found each other in the military. He was going through a bad time. I was obviously going through my bad time. I was on my road to learning about myself. I would pass these messages on to him. So we've both picked each other up when we needed it. But we've started our new adventure, which is the Armed Forces Business Centre. It's going to be the first one in Colchester, where we're looking at giving back. We're coming back between charity and business. If obviously, as mentioned before, the current climate for veterans leaving isn't that great. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to offer circles of wealth or health or whatever we want, and obviously financial advice that you're giving, and obviously people can come in, and depending on where they want to go on different circumstances is where they end up. So there'll be business mentors, everyone just giving back to veterans. And we've obviously it's a great journey that we've been on. Obviously a lot of failures, a lot of learning in that
Yeah.
journey, and obviously, I'm not sat here proclaiming everything's great. I mean, all I've done in my life is just acknowledge my small wins. I mean, at no point I'm saying I'm the richest man, and I believe money comes uh, with time. If you are doing good, and giving back to people, that's just a byproduct.
And I know that money's not the be all and end all for you, because it's about the successful journey and how this Armed Forces Business Centre is going to help. And we're going to explore the other aspects of it as well. The fact is, though, money is a silent applause for a job well done. Money is a silent applause for a job well done.
Oh, I like that saying. Thank you.
Uh,
Again, for me, money doesn't make you happy.
no,
It buys you time and your freedom to buy your own hobbies,
yeah.
and that's the best thing. But for me, when you give back, it does come back without worry. Obviously, for me, along my way, it's just acknowledging your accomplishments and your steps, even how small they are, and it's obviously it's a strong sense of purpose. For me, I look at my why daily. because if
Yeah.
your why's not strong enough, it's easy to quit. And obviously, it's just I've always given back. So as I said, the tuck shop and on the army thing, and my experiences has also taught me the importance of resilience and adaptability, especially being in the military. And obviously, it brings gratitude to our latest project, which is, as I mentioned, the Armed Forces Business Center, and
Yeah.
it's just a testament to our mission on not only achieving success but also making a meaningful impact.
And that's great. Thank you. And so many people get bothered and concentrate on how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that. And they all get, from what I've experienced, they all get stuck in the how, all the detail. Whereas you touched on it, and I regularly say it, when your why is big enough, the how will come, because you just got to focus on your why. And what's disappointing for me is one of the reasons I started my journey, which you know about, in 2000, shortly after my incident in 1999, so 2000, it wasn't that great coming out of the military then. And it's still not that great. And I'm just thinking, when are they going to learn? So that's why what you're doing now is fantastic, because you've also got the 2 chevrons as well going with
Yeah,
that.
so
Tell me about
yeah,
that.
obviously we've partnered up with another CIC, which is 2 chevrons, and we've obviously come together with aligning ourselves again. It's just hanging around with them people that are aligned and where we're going. And obviously 2 chevrons, obviously we're going to be offering grants. So for obviously the grants can go for funds that can support organizations, individuals, and programs where, if you want to do public speaking or life coaching or those kind of things, which currently the level 3 qualification that you get from the army, it has to be a level 3 qualification, but it's not actually level 3 qualification,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the work that you're doing in putting it in, I mean, they tick all the boxes for it, but you don't actually have the real life experience for it.
mm,
So we're obviously going to be, you'll get a stamp of approval. Businesses can basically sign up and get the bronze package, silver package, or gold package. And again, it'll just be a seal of approval, basically, that is a veteran-owned company that are supporting veterans. And obviously, we're going to look at how they're employing veterans. Are they financially secure to be employing veterans? And looking at it's just a big collaboration that we've just come together, and it's just fully just giving back to people. So when people sign on to these, they'll get half the money back with the grants that they get for the people or their employees. So it's a great kind of thing, and it's a combination between mentoring and obviously we're obviously supporting blue light services as well. So that obviously the fire and police, they get out and they're kind of lost with things, especially firefighters. We've
yeah,
currently got a firefighter working for us, and they've also seen some horrendous things, cutting babies out of cars
yeah,
and and so on, and especially the younger generation compared to the newer generation. So they did that evacuation up in Herrick, and some of them saw some horrendous things,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they don't see themselves worthy.
yeah,
So they talk about it and say, I didn't do a Herrick. I'm not. So they're not blaming. They're not going into that zone of acknowledging that they've seen some horrendous things,
yeah.
and maybe they were only there for a short period, but they have seen a lot of things. And
And also you get the guilt complex as well, don't you? Where if your buddy, your oppo, has been killed or got injured in the IED, and maybe you weren't there, or you were maybe a little bit further away and you didn't get hurt, and you think, "Well, why wasn't it me?"
yeah, yeah. And that's usually what the thing that gets people going. So that's the thing that gets you is the regret of how you should have been or what you should have done to
Yeah,
save these people. And for me, I've obviously been through that. I'm fortunate. Sometimes I've actually just forgotten everything about the military. Someone will say, "Where have you been on ops?" And I'll be like, "Oh,
yeah.
I've just gone." It's obviously that subconscious mind, conscious mind, and I've obviously decided to let that go, which very grateful for.
And that's a whole process, and that's one of the things that we're going to be doing as well. And I mean, I thank you for your support as well, how you're helping guys. So how can what's the big thing now with the launch, and how can people get in touch with you?
So we've got our launch coming up 1st of March. I believe you coming along as well.
I am certainly.
So thank you for your support. So again, that's going to be in Colchester, 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. We're going to have drinks there. We're going to have VIP people turning up. We've got a couple of millionaires. Again, it's surrounding yourself with those people.
Yeah.
And we've got I don't know if I should say it on here, but we've got some very important people
Yeah,
coming.
don't say no sensitive operational information. Just
No, no.
just keep it as a surprise. But yeah,
So again, Genesis Group Global. Anyone can find us on there, or we'll soon have the Armed Forces Business Center webpage up and running. And again, two chevrons are up and running. It's got its own website as well. And again, it's just obviously what we're trying to promote is how to start a business, how to get logos, how to,
yeah.
a lot of people don't know even how to pay council tax.
No, I
So
know.
all this is all very new. So we've obviously opened 6 businesses. We're running 6 businesses, and everything just comes into one now. And it's the main goal of everything is trying to figure out what went wrong with everything. Well, for us, charities have gone a long way off path.
Yeah,
So we just trying to bring that back on again and supporting who we believe needs
yeah.
it.
And your co-directors, like you've got uh, Chris Alley and
So
then Robin Lockwood with the social media, and then you've got Josh, haven't you?
yeah, Josh is he's a great partner. So he's obviously a business mentor as well.
Yeah,
He goes and takes people up from Joe Blogs up to CEO roles,
yeah,
and it's just having that knowledge. I mean, I also ran a t-shirt business, and it's still running currently. So when I was in the army, I was on tour. I developed a t-shirt company, and I have someone printing it, and it just works. What I've done is it was called Hooligan Apparel, and all I took was a motorbike, and I put on a t-shirt, and I stuck Hooligan Apparel underneath, and I was to the point. I mean, people were loving it. Like, I mean, taking things. I taught myself how to use that. I
yeah,
taught
yeah.
myself how to use Photoshop, but it's all been my learning curves and my process.
And that's a wealth of information. Well, listen, thank you so much for inviting me to your opening. I know we're going to be having speaker events as well and all sorts of stuff where the guys can just get loads of information.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's just surrounding yourself with those kind of people that are, I'm not necessarily saying that we're going places, but it is just surrounding yourself and getting the knowledge. 8 to the 10th of March is another weekender. So we're having a
Yeah.
weekend. Loads of good speakers coming there. And again, we're just trying to get the seats filled up, which they're filling up quite quick.
Yeah, and I know you've invited me to speak there as well, which is fabulous, and I'm honoured. So, last thing, the Columbo question, which I always love directing at people, veterans, is what's the one top tip that you would give to a guy getting out of the army or a veteran who's out of the army who is either successful or maybe not doing all that well?
So for me, there's a 1% luck, 1% knowledge, and 98% just, cracking on. I think the biggest mistake people make right now, no matter what the situation are, is to give up.
Yeah.
You might not reach the best version of yourself in this lifetime, but a better one you are right now. So just keep going on. And when you hit them dark days, we realize we are born in the dark, and that's where we grow.
Fantastic. And building on that, how transferable do you think the skills are from the military to Civvy Street and how valuable?
I mean, there's so many things. There's teamwork. For me, I've obviously been on building sites, I've been places, and I've seen the military guys are such a high standard compared to normal people, and it's having that leadership. And for me, it's believing in yourself again. So military people don't know their worth. And all I want to say is know your worth, brothers and sisters, because we are on another level when we leave the military.
Thank you. Brendon, Blair, aka Tony, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. I'll just leave you with one more little top tip.
Please.
The quality of your life is determined by how much you're willing to bet on yourself, regardless of what anybody else is thinking of you. So just go for it, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Cheers. JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.